Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the School Employer Advisory Committee meeting, or SEAC, and welcome to those of you on the webcast. In the past, our CalPERS stakeholder relations team facilitated this meeting, but is now transferred over to us, the Employer Account Management Division, Employer Response Team. So welcome, everybody. I'm William Greenhalgh, and a member of the ERT, the Employer Response Team, and with me is Susan Foer. And back at the table, we have Veronica, who's going to help us run microphones. Thank you. This year, the SEAC meeting will be held here at CalSTRS headquarters, and then we'll go back to CalPERS in 2020. Today, you'll be hearing from the latest updates on services, programs, policies related to your district's work with CalPERS. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. For those of you here in person, you have a gray folder on your table that will have the CalPERS slides, the agenda, and for those of you on the online, our materials can be found at the CalPERS website. If you need more than one copy, like I said, they're available on the website for you to print out. Please make sure you sign in. The sign-in sheet was outside. Restrooms out the door. If there's an emergency, run. Just head out to your nearest doors. We got this door, and we do have this door over here. As I said, we're being joined by video conference. So if you have questions, please wait for the microphone. Otherwise, the people watching online won't be able to hear what the question is. And for those of you on the webcast, if you have questions that you would like to ask the presenter, you can email us at SEAC, SEAC underscore.
It's CalPERS underscore.
It is, isn't it? I apologize for that. It's CalPERS underscore SEAC at calpers.ca.gov. That's CalPERS underscore SEAC, SEAC at calpers.ca.gov. We will get your email here and ask the questions for you for the presenter. Okay, without further ado, let's bring up Andrea Peterson from our legislative group.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Peters, and I'm with the California Public Employees Retirement System Legislative Affairs Division, and I am here to present your legislative update. We are currently at the beginning of a 2-year legislative session, so bills are still being introduced and analyzed. Therefore, you guys do not have handouts today. We are going to discuss a handful of bills, primarily those that are sponsored by CalPERS, and then 2 legislative bills for today. The first 2 bills that I want to discuss are the 2 CalPERS-sponsored bills. These bills are currently not in print. However, the language has been submitted, and we do have authors. These 2 bills do not make changes to existing processes. They're just tightening up the language that's currently in statute, so there will be no changes to the processes that we have today. The first sponsored bill that we have will be authored by Assemblymember Cervantes, and this bill expressly prohibits disability and industrial disability retirees from returning to a retired annuitant position that is the same or closely related to the position in which they received the disability retirement from. This would include positions that have duties or activities that they were restricted from performing at the time of their disability or industrial disability retirement. The second sponsored bill is going to be our annual housekeeping bill, and there are 2 primary provisions that are within this bill. The first provision is going to clarify that retired members who elected to receive an unmodified allowance or a return of remaining contributions optional settlement, that they are permitted to name a new beneficiary and to provide an optional settlement to that beneficiary when the qualifying event of marriage happens after retirement. The second provision, which I believe is a provision that everyone here is interested, is regarding unused sick leave. So this bill will clarify that for the purpose of converting unused sick leave to service credit at retirement for all members who are employed by a school district, a county office of education, or a community college district, that the unused sick leave shall include sick leave transferred from a previous school employer to the school employer in which the member is retiring from, pursuant to certain codes within the education. So do we have any questions on the two sponsored bills that we have? Okay. Yes. Yes. So the question was regarding the unused sick leave conversion, so that if you are employed by a school district from another county, and then you move to a different county and employed by that school district, the sick leave will transfer based on what is allowed within the education code. So yes. Okay. So we have two more bills that I'm going to discuss today, and both of these are regarding investments. CalPERS staff are currently reviewing these bills. So the first bill is Assembly Bill 33 by Assemblymember Bonta. This bill would prohibit CalPERS and CalSTRS from making new investments in companies that generate the majority of their revenue by either operating, managing, or contracting as a prison or detention center. And it requires both CalPERS and CalSTRS to liquidate any existing investments that they have in these companies before July 1st of 2020. The second bill is AB 181 by Assemblymember Rodriguez. And this bill would require CalPERS and CalSTRS to define the term emerging manager and produce a 5-year strategic plan for emerging investment managers' participation across all of our asset classes. It also requires CalPERS to define the term transition manager and address its participation within our plan. The bill would also require CalPERS and CalSTRS to submit an annual report to the legislature every year until January 1st of 2024. So those are the bills that we have here today for you. Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you guys for your time. Oh, we do.
Yay. Okay. I thought it might also be worth mentioning about the bill that didn't happen last year, SB 1124.
Okay.
And the potential of that coming back and also looping in schools.
Okay, so it has not been introduced, but we had a bill last year, SB 1124, and that bill originally impacted public agencies and state agencies. And I'm sorry, Renee, I'm trying to recall exactly which that bill did right off the top of my head.
Okay, that's sorry. I know I'm catching you off guard. So I just thought it would be worth you having a knowledge of it, since we are hearing rumblings of it being reintroduced, and it also including schools this time around. And so what the bill was about, it had to do with employers misreporting, and if there's an overpayment in a retirement allowance as a result of an employer's misreporting, then when we find the error in the misreporting and we
Downward adjust.
Downward, thank you. I'm like, downgrade, that's not the word I want. Downward. When we downward adjust the retiree's allowance, that entire overpayment that we have paid as a result of the misreporting is required to be paid by the employer. So we would be sending the employer a bill for that entire amount. Currently, we bill the employer for anything that's past the statute of limitations. But in this bill, in its form that it had been introduced last year, it says the employer would pay that entire amount, and the employer would be required to enter into a settlement agreement with that member and pay the present value of that difference of the downward adjustment for their lifetime, in essence. So basically what they would have received going forward.
So it's a rather complicated bill, and what we're going to do is, so we do understand that there is the desire for the sponsor to reintroduce this bill, but until we see it in its new form, we will have to analyze it and work with Renee's team to decide what the impact would be to all of our employers. So.
We have one question emailed to us. Please clarify the bill. Please clarify the bill affecting marriage after retirement.
So that is going to be our housekeeping bill, and that one currently does not have a number. But once we have a number, we can go ahead and make sure that you guys get it so everybody can review the language.
And the bill that Renee was speaking about was SB 1124?
Yes.
Correct?
So that was from last year. So that was from the 2017-2018 legislative session. So if you want to go online and look that bill up, or you can even go to the CalPERS website, we should still have a link to that bill that you guys can look up and you can see the language. The reason that we didn't talk about it last year was because it was very specific to contracting agencies and to the state agencies. I do understand that they are talking about expanding it to school employers, but without having the language right in front of us and seeing it very clearly, we wouldn't be able to speak to the impact on that just yet.
That's all I got.
Okay, all right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, Holly and Nicole, for your questions. Next, we have our Social Security update by Veronica Sylvia Gill.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Veronica Silva-Gill, like Bill said. I am the manager of the State Social Security Administrator Program. CalPERS has been designated the State Social Security Administrator for the state of California since 1955. So that's why we are hosted here. I want to tell you a little bit about our role. So we act as liaison between the employer, the Social Security Administration, and the IRS. So I'm here to give you a message from Social Security. We're going to talk about retired annuitants today. So first, I'm going to review a little bit of what a Section 218 agreement is. Then we're going to go into a definition of what retired annuitant is based on what IRS definition is. And then we're going to go over some scenarios or whether or not people should pay Social Security or not for those employees. So first of all, Section 218 agreement is a voluntary agreement. It's called a Section 218 agreement because that's the portion of the Social Security law that provides voluntary Social Security coverage to the employees. So unlike the private sector where everybody pays Social Security, public employers only pay Social Security if, in addition to a retirement system, they want to offer Social Security, then they would sign the agreement to provide that voluntary coverage. So the schools did that back in 1956, and you guys have a copy of the agreement in your handouts. The agreement covers all of the positions in the schools. The schools decided not to do any exclusion, so none of the positions are excluded from the Section 218 agreement. So the Section 218 agreement covers positions. So we don't look at the employee until we figure out if the position is actually covered by a Section 218 agreement. So if the employee, any employee is occupying a position that is covered by the Section 218 agreement, then that employee is going to pay Social Security and Medicare contributions regardless of who that employee is. So we look at the position. So that's the most important thing that we want to analyze in these cases. So this chart, I know it looks really small, but I give you guys a handout. It's, we use that in the office every day. It comes from publication 963 of the IRS. It's a chart that we use to figure out if someone should be paying Social Security or not. So I'm gonna zoom in to the first box. And the way that this chart starts is that first we ask if the position is covered by a Section 218 agreement. So if the agency that we are analyzing has a Section 218 agreement, so in this case the schools, if the position is covered under that agreement, meaning it's not being excluded, so specifically would have to say under the exclusions part of the agreement that the positions are excluded, then they're covered. So that means that they are covered under Social Security. So if we are able to say yes, then we move on to the next box. And the next box says withhold Social Security and Medicare unless an exclusion applies. It does make reference to the Social Security state and local laws. And in those exclusions, they're very rare. They exclude agricultural labor, what the other ones are. Inmates that are working within the prison, or people who are in a hospital and they're working too. It's very, very, very strange the exclusions. So most likely the position would be covered. They're not excluded, so they should be paying Social Security. Now, in 1991, the Social Security Administration determined that there were employees out there that were not offering any type of retirement plan for their employees. So they came up with a mandatory law. So if the employer was not offering a retirement system or was paying into Social Security via a Section 218 agreement, then it made it mandatory for the employers to provide, some type of retirement. So it was the Social Security. So anyone who is not in the positions that are not covered under a Section 218 agreement of the employee did not qualify for the retirement system that the employer was offering, then the employee had to pay Social Security. So that's what the mandatory falls into. Also want to tell you a little bit about Medicare. So mandatory Medicare came about in 1986. However, any employer who had a Section 218 agreement when Medicare was signed into law in 1966 would already have Medicare coverage for their employees. So what that means for schools is that in 1966, the schools already had a Section 218 agreement in place, so their employees would automatically be covered for Medicare. No, 66, that's when the Medicare came into law. So because the schools were already, in 1966, already had a Section 218 agreement, then the employees were already covered for Medicare. Now, if you have an employee that was not covered under the Section 218 agreement, for example, the teachers, the teachers that are not covered under the Section 218 agreement, then if they were hired prior to 1986, then they wouldn't be paying mandatory Medicare. Only those employees who were hired or rehired after April 1st of 1986 are mandated into Medicare. So if you have someone that leaves and then comes back, they have to pay Medicare. So now we're going to go back to our chart. So if we ask the question, is the position covered under Social Security, under a Section 218 agreement, and our answer is no this time, for example, the teachers or anyone else, then we ask if the employee, now we're looking at the employee. So we started with the position, now we're gonna look at the employee. So if the employee is part of a qualified retirement system, so if the employee does not belong to the retirement system, then the position falls into the mandatory Social Security, right? That's what our last box says. So, because they have to have something, right? So if they're not participating in the retirement system, then they fall into the mandatory law. So let me stop and get the definition of a retire or rehire annuitant. So according to the IRS, a retired or rehired annuitant is someone who is receiving a pension from the same retirement system that they are going back to work to, or they used to work for the same entity. So for example, if somebody used to work for, I don't know, City of Sacramento, and they're receiving a pension from City of Sacramento, if they go back to work for them, they qualify as a retired annuitant. But now, if they go back to work for, City of Fresno, and City of Fresno and City of Sacramento have the same retirement system, maybe CalPERS, hopefully, then that person is considered a retired annuitant because both of the employers have their same retirement system. So that's what, according to IRS, that's what a retired annuitant is. When we look at retired annuitants, a lot of the misconception is that they automatically are exempt from Social Security because the IRS law says that the retired annuitant is exempt from mandatory Social Security. But we don't go into the mandatory law until we first look at Section 218 agreement. So one of the things that I usually say is that Section 218 agreement is the king. So if the king says that you're covered, you're covered. So we don't look at mandatory law. If by any chance any of the retired annuitant positions will fall into the mandatory law, then they will be exempt from mandatory coverage. So, and I'll give you some examples so that we can look at that. So I have some scenarios, and these are based on some of the inquiries that we have received, in our office. So we have someone who is age 75, and then comes over and starts working as a bus driver at one of the city school districts. He's already receiving Social Security benefits and Medicare benefits. He's never worked at any of the school districts, and he's never worked in any other CalPERS agency, so he's not receiving any type of pension. Do you guys think he should pay Social Security? Yes, absolutely. The bus position wouldn't be covered under, the bus driver position wouldn't be covered in the Section 218 agreement. He would be covered with both Social Security and Medicare because he was hired after April 1st of 1986. He wouldn't qualify for the retirement system because he's probably working very few hours. And he doesn't meet the definition of retired annuitant, which is the most important thing to remember here, because he's not receiving a CalPERS pension. And the age, it doesn't matter what the age is. If you're 75, 80, and you're already receiving benefits, Social Security wants those contributions. So it's a tax. So if you're working, you got to pay the taxes. Okay, now, moving on to scenario number 2. We have a retiree from CalPERS. Now they go and work at a local school district as an administrative assistant. So the administrative assistant position is covered under CalPERS. So again, we're going to start with the position. Do you guys think that this person should pay Social Security and Medicare? Yes. Oh, man. Can we play just for this one? All right, well, another position is covered under CalPERS. The lunch lady or something, maybe. Oh, shit. How can they work? Huh?
They're saying an aide.
Oh, okay, an aide. It's working as an aide. Okay, there you go. All right. So the Section 218 agreement does not exclude the aides from coverage. So this person should pay Social Security and Medicare because this person actually doesn't qualify as a retired annuitant. They are receiving a pension from CalPERS, but they're not receiving a pension from CalPERS. So they are not retired annuitants for that concept. So we start with the position, and because the position is covered in the 218 agreement, then this person has to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes. All right. Okay, then I have a last example. Hopefully I'm not violating any other laws here. So we have another retiree from CalPERS, and now they obtain a substitute teaching job at the local school district. Can that happen? Yes, okay. Okay, so now the position is covered under CalPERS, right? The substitute teacher. So now, should we withhold Social Security and Medicare for this person? Yes. So the position is not covered under CalPERS because they don't have they don't have a 218 agreement. And we should be withholding Social Security and Medicare because if the retiree does not qualify for CalSTRS membership. And this person wouldn't meet the definition of a retiree annuitant, based on IRS definitions. Because again, they are now getting a CalPERS pension, and they're going for a CalSTRS position. So you guys see the theme. So now we have some resources for you.
I have a
Oh,
question that came in.
yes.
It's now a good time? Okay.
Sure.
This is from Monica Keller from Ventura. How can they find out if a school district or county office of ed is excluded from the 218 agreement?
They're all covered. Yeah. Oh, so she's asking, it came from Ventura, asking how can you find out if your school is excluded from the Section 218 agreement? And the answer is that all of the school districts are covered under the Section 218 agreement. And I provided you a copy of the Section 218 agreement. Yes, we have a question.
But all the county offices are not.
The county offices are not.
Right.
Not all of them.
You got a lot of county offices in here.
Yes, 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 you're from, yes, sweetie, yes. So the County Office of Educations had some special legislation that happened, I believe, in the 80s, early 80s, that allowed them to separate, to continue their retirement agreement with CalPERS, but had to be separated from Social Security. So some County Office of Education did choose to enter into their own Section 218 agreement, but some of them don't. But that only applies to the actual, the County Office of Education. But all of the school districts are covered under the Section 218 agreement. Yes. So the Social Security has their page that you can see there that provides, excellent resources for, all of these laws that we're quoting and the, like the definitions that we are referring to. The IRS also has their page for the governmental, agencies. We have our own page as the state administrator within CalPERS, and we publish information there. We publish a quarterly newsletter, so we try to tailor our articles to, to the inquiries that we are getting, so that people, get informed, on things that are going on. And we also host monthly webinars. So if you guys go to our page there, you can find the link to register to our webinars. We just hosted one on the web and the GPO, and the next one that we have coming up is going to be on the annual information request for County Office of Education and public agencies. So I hope to see you there. Okay, so that's our webinars, and I'll take questions.
I just have one clarifying question. Are subs considered a position because retirees aren't allowed to be in permanent positions at schools? So do you guys consider a sub a position when it
Substitute
says
teacher,
if a
is that
position
certificated
covered by the
position?
218?
Is that a certificated position?
Classified subs.
So the classified positions are covered under the Section 218 agreement. So only the certificated positions that are under
Is a
CalSTRS,
sub,
yeah,
do you guys consider sub work a position?
yes. Yeah, we, I also included something that, and this is because it came around in one of the school districts in Fresno. It's in one of your handouts, the Social Security, the IRS, I'm sorry, provided specifically about retirement annuitants. It has some examples, and, again, it goes over, the position. It, he emphasizes that, maybe CalPERS has different rules than what Social Security has, and IRS have as definitions of who's covered and who's not covered. So CalPERS is telling you that you should have specific positions that are for retirement annuitants, but IRS doesn't see it that way. they're looking at the position. So if the position, because most likely some of the people that come back to work are occupying the same position or perhaps working as a part-time basis, where it could be occupied by somebody who can work full-time basis. So that's usually the case on some of those positions, and that's why IRS is guiding that they have to pay Social Security because the Section 218 agreement covers those positions.
Sheila Walker, Tama County Office of Ed. I think we're confusing things here because we have a lot of retirees come back and do subclassified work, bus drivers, stuff like that. And we were told a long time ago that those were retired annuitant positions because they were a sub. It's not that they're doing the actual job full time, they're just subbing for somebody. So, but I wasn't.
Yeah, IRS doesn't see it that way. I actually personally had the conversation with IRS right after they went to visit the Fresno area, the Fresno County Office of Education, I believe it was in that area, one of the districts over there. And that's what I said. I'm like, what if the districts only recruit, return annuitants, that is not open to the public where anyone can occupy the position? And he said that they don't see it that way. There's not such a thing for them. So that's a thing for, for CalPERS, because they want you to designate, return annuitant positions, right? Where they are not going to go over the 960 hours, that they're only temporary positions. So that is, that is CalPERS rules. But Social Security and IRS don't see it that way. So they're occupying a position that, perhaps I can do, or a stay-home mom can do, or a stay-home dad can do. And that is why they have to pay Social Security. They're covered in the Section 218 agreement.
Okay, I'm not really talking about the Social Security. I'm talking about what I inferred from what you said is they're not allowed to come back as a sub. A retired PERS can't come back and do sub work.
Right, and that's CalPERS. But Social Security is telling you that if they're working and they're covering the Section 218 agreement, then they have to pay taxes.
We have Christina, who's our membership manager.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm the manager of the working after retirement, post-retirement employment area. So yes, Veronica's talking about a little bit different, the Social Security. So retired annuitants can come back and work in subs if they're in retired annuitant positions. So I'll talk about that in more detail because I think I'm presenting next, but they can. So what Veronica's talking about in the withholding of the Social Security for retired annuitants is different than the positions that these retired annuitants are coming back to work into.
Yes. I know it's confusing. It's very confusing. That's why I was trying to clarify. Who has another question? Yes.
Hi, Debbie from Fresno County Office of
Hi.
Ed.
Yeah. Hi, Debbie.
Yeah, I'm the one that started all this.
Yes. Thank you.
One of my districts had an IRS auditor in there, kind of looking for everything. So I contacted the Social Security and asked for the 218 agreement because the IRS auditor asked for it. In the process, we had a person who was an administrative assistant. She retired. She came back to work as extra help as needed, like to fill in when work, was overflowing. We had a girl that went out on a leave. So she was filling in as extra help. Well, the IRS auditor said that she needed to be paying Social Security. And I reached out to several people and they're like, we've never coded a retiree with Social Security. And because they are a CalPERS retiree, everybody concurred with that. But what I'm hearing is something totally different. Am I correct?
Yes, this is IRS guidance.
So I think what I'm wondering is, do you have your retirees pay into Social Security? No. So we're all doing it wrong? And we're all going to be audited by the IRS and get in trouble?
Well, no, you're not going to be all audited by the IRS. Yeah, it's random audits, yeah.
This is huge. This guy is looking at this, and he's saying how many districts are under my county umbrella, which I have 38, and every one of them, my retirees, when they come back, we do not code them with Social Security. So if he finds one, that's going to open a can of worms for the whole state of California. So that's why I reached out and asked for a presentation on it.
Yes, so I mean, if you guys have a specific, positions or situations that you want us to escalate to Social Security, to IRS, we'll be happy to do that. Also, if you think that, that is your situation where the position should be paying Social Security and Medicare, I recommend that you start doing it now. Because that's what IRS is going to look ultimately. Well, we discover an error, and we're, on a prospective basis, we're going to, start, paying Social Security taxes. They appreciate that, and that's what they're looking for. That you correct it, going, as soon as you find out about the error, that you start contributing for those positions that should be paying into Social Security. Hi, Vina.
Sorry, missed the presentation. But I do have a question based on their questions.
Yes.
Give us an example when a retiree is not covered under Social Security. Because from IRS angle, there is no exclusion from Social Security.
Right, because the Section 218 agreement covers all of the positions in the school.
We understand that piece. What we are asking is, give us an example when we hire a retiree where they shouldn't be paying Social Security. So it's easier for us to understand that we take Social Security from all because it's not excluded. Because we have passed, directives where we were instructed not to take Social Security. So we want to kind of know, when do you think they shouldn't be? They are excluded, I mean.
Well,
Do you have
since
an
we have,
example?
no, because there's no positions
So
that are
then
excluded,
why
yes.
don't you just issue a directive saying all retirees should pay Social Security, so it's easier for us
To do that.
make the change?
Yep, we can look into that, yep.
Because when they are hired, since they are not paying,
Yes.
and is it including the county offices too?
No, the county offices, well, unless you have a 218 agreement, and then we have to look at your county's 218 agreement.
Okay, so can you clarify that in that directive?
Yes, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, so we would have to, look at each of the county's Office of Education, because some of them have no exclusions, but some of them may be excluding their part-time positions or their elective officials. That's really all the valid exclusions that you can do, really.
There is other one which we come across is, you know how PERS has been auditing overtime positions? And the way some of the districts PARS contract, where they have exclusions, retirees, overtime position, or whatever that paragraph is. So when PERS ask us to reverse the overtime positions, we don't really reverse the Social Security because it's
covered, because the
IRS
position.
exclusion. So I just want to make sure if we clarify that.
The overtime as well, yes. So in
Exactly.
overtime positions, yeah, they have to pay Social Security. You might not have to contribute CalPERS contributions, but the overtime, you have to pay Social Security taxes.
Some of the PARS contract says that they will take PARS on it. So there is a little confusion
Okay.
for the districts.
Okay.
Thank you
All right.
very
Thank
much.
you, Vina. All right. And in the handouts, there is also direct contact information. You have our phone number and our email address. So we're happy to answer any questions or review any cases that you may have. Okay. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have hiring retirees as independent contractors. Christina Rollins, thank you.
Perfect segue.
How lucky am I that I get to present after talks about an IRS audit? Good morning, everyone. Like Bill said, I'm Christina Rollins. I'm the section manager over the membership and post-retirement employment determinations team in our Sacramento office. And today we'll be talking about hiring CalPERS retirees as independent contractors. Just so I can get an idea, how many of you guys hire independent contractors or CalPERS retirees or any kind of independent contractors? Okay, I see a lot of you do, and I think this topic came up specifically because the schools wanted to know what happens when they hire a CalPERS retiree as an independent contractor or through a third-party employment, like a temp agency or through a third-party consulting firm or so forth. So we'll be discussing that, but first I just want to distinguish the differences between the different types of employment relationships that you can have at your schools. So we have employees, retired annuitants, and independent contractors. And I think all of you guys know what employees are. And employees are the people that work for your agency in part-time, full-time positions. They're usually on your organizational chart. They should be on your organizational chart, and they report to someone at your agency. Our public employees retirement law defines what an employee is, and it's anybody that's in the employ of your agency. Independent contractors are different because independent contractors, they're excluded from membership. They're excluded from CalPERS membership. They can work as many hours as they'd like. They are not brought in. And this would be the same for CalPERS retiree as well. If a CalPERS retiree came to work for your agency, they would be exempt if they're truly an independent contractor from the working after retirement rules. Then retired annuitants. Retired annuitants are different. These are CalPERS retirees that are coming to work at your schools, and they're working in retired annuitant designated positions. Retired annuitants fall under two categories. They're usually filling a vacant position while an active recruitment is going on for a position, or more than likely, they're in an extra help position. So we have the example of sub or bus drivers that are coming back when there's a backlog, or you need the extra help, or you have an emergency at your office and you need these temporary workers to come in and work. That's typically what we see the agencies doing when they're hiring retired annuitants. But if you're hiring retired annuitants, they are subject to the CalPERS working after retirement restrictions. There's a lot of them, but the 960 hours, the 6-month break in service, and so forth. So again, independent contractors, hiring them is different because they are not subject to those working after retirement rules if they truly are an independent contractor. And independent contractors, they're distinct because they are not being controlled by your agency. They're usually hired to do a specific task, a specific project. It's a short amount of time. They finish and complete that project, and then their work stops. An example I'd like to use for that is that you have a painter. You want to hire a painter to come paint a building at your school. And you hire them. You say it's going to take about 2 months to paint. They come in, paint, finish the job. You're not directing them what to do. You're not telling them when to go on breaks. You're not approving any time off. They're just responsible for a specific task. And then at the end of that, that's it for them. They're not working for your agency anymore. So the other type of employment that we hear about a lot with agencies is third-party employment. Typically, this is if you're hiring employees to work for a temporary agency. For a long time, most agencies were treating these temporary agencies as employees of the temporary agency and essentially as independent contractors for your agency because they weren't hired directly through you. However, at CalPERS, employees that are hired through temporary agencies typically are in control by your agency. They're usually coming in to fill a position at your agency, like maybe, for example, while somebody's on maternity or paternity leave or an extended leave, and you hire somebody from this third party to come and work for your agency. So typically, agencies think like, oh, they're totally exempt from CalPERS. We don't have to bring them in. But again, usually the control of that person and the work that they're doing is being conducted by your agency, and they should be monitored for CalPERS membership or if they're a retiree for their working after retirement restrictions. Were you guys aware of that? The temporary agencies? You guys all hire the temporary agency employees or retirees? Okay. So the test to do an independent contractor review, how we determine that, it can be very subjective, but we perform what we call the common law control test. The common law control test determines who is controlling the means and the manner of the work that is being performed at your agency. It's, again, that independent contractor is doing a specific task. They can check in with you guys as far as their progress, but their work should not be controlled. What they're doing should not be controlled. They should be responsible for the end task, and when that work is done, then their work is complete, and they no longer work for your agency any longer. So at CalPERS, we ask that if you are hiring independent contractors to come, or employees that work for a temp agency, if you're hiring these types of employees to come and work for your agency, you should, before you hire them, contact us at CalPERS and have us do a review of that person's contract. to ensure that they're in compliance with the CalPERS rules or laws. As you guys know, for CalPERS retirees, or even just for CalPERS members, if it's determined that somebody should have been brought into membership or they were working unlawfully as a retiree, there can be dire consequences for that retiree as far as overpayments, the loss of health benefits, COLAs, and there could be fees, and there are fees for the employers as well. So we always ask that if you are hiring these types of retirees, or even retired annuitants, that you ask us to do a review of that position and make sure that it is compliant with the working after retirement restrictions. So for the review process, we get requests to usually review a contract. If you're hiring a CalPERS retiree as an independent contractor, usually all you have is a contract of some sort. You don't really have any other documentation except for that contract. So you'll send that contract in to CalPERS and we'll do a review. We will also send you a checklist, and I have that checklist with me so I can pass it out. I think we're at a break next, so I can give it to you guys in the back. But we have a checklist of other documentation that we would like to have if you have it for a review, if needed. It's information such as payroll information, how the person's going to be paid, questionnaires about the nature of that person's work, job duty statements, things like that, to help us determine what kind of employment that CalPERS retiree is entering into with your school. So once we make a determination, we will send what our determination is to your agency and to that worker that's coming back to work. So it will usually say that they are compliant or they're not. They are compliant or they're not with the working after retirement rules. If it's determined, again, I said that it's really important to make sure that you submit those reviews ahead of time so that we can make a determination. If it's determined later after the person has been working that they're truly not an independent contractor or they're in violation of the retired annuitant laws, again, they will be automatically reinstated into retirement. And that's a long, and again, it has consequences for the employee, the retiree, and for the agency as well. After we send a preliminary determination, again, if you don't agree with it, there will be a chance for you guys to provide additional information about that position that the person is working in to see if it changes that determination. If it does or if it doesn't, we'll still send you a final determination letter with what type of position we determine that employee is working in as a retiree. You also always have the opportunity to appeal. If you don't agree with our decision, you can appeal that, and it'll go through our administrative process. So, oh, I'm sorry. So that's a good question. It says, how long does it take for CalPERS to make a determination when it's going through the process? So if you're hiring a CalPERS retiree as an independent contractor, and you submit the contract to us prior to the retiree working, it'll take us between 30 to 60 days to make that determination. For employees, it takes a little bit longer. It takes between 60 and 90 days. The reason for this is because we require a lot of documentation, as you'll see on that checklist that I'm providing for you guys if you need it. And so it takes the agency a while to get that information to us. And depending on how much information is received, it could take a while to review it as well. So it depends on how soon we get that information back, how soon you can get that information before we can make a determination. For the retirees, again, we ask that you submit it to us ahead of time, and those take, they're quicker to review if the person has not been working already, if they're just starting out and not hired yet, and you just wanted to get it reviewed. Are there any other questions? No, we have.
Hi, does the retiree, do they have to wait 180 days to come back as an independent contractor?
Okay, so I think you guys heard the question. Does a retiree have to wait 180 days before they come back as a contractor? And the answer is no. If they're truly an independent contractor, they are not subject to the working after retirement restrictions. So they would not be subject to that 180-day break from retirement before they come back to work. But that's also very important why you should submit those independent contractor cases or those contracts to us ahead of time to make sure that they truly are independent. Because again, if it's determined that they came back to work as an independent contractor, but they really weren't an independent contractor, they would be breaking that 180-day rule and would be reinstated from retirement. Do we have any other questions? Okay, so here on my screen, we have some resources. We have the contact center, of course, you guys are familiar with that number. The CalPERS website and our reference guides have a lot of information regarding working after retirement, independent contractors, retired annuitant restrictions. And also our mailbox is here as well. If you guys don't have it, you can submit inquiries or your retiree independent contractor contracts to us directly at this mailbox, this email box. It's working_after_retirement@calpers.ca.gov. You can send your inquiries directly to that website, your questions, and somebody from my team will answer those questions, review your contracts, and provide a determination to you. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Christina.